Welcome, everyone. This is the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating Podcast. Here we chat about all things boating with marine industry professionals and enthusiasts who spend all the time they can out on the water.
Hi, this is Tanya Becker, and I'm your host for today's episode of PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating. I'm really thrilled to chat with today's guest. Kirk Deeter is a vice president at Trout Unlimited and is the editor-in-chief for Trout Unlimited's quarterly magazine. He's also an editor-at-large for Field and Stream magazine, and just some of the places his stories have appeared over the years, in addition to Trout and Field and Stream, include Garden and Gun, The Drake, Fly Rod and Reel, Fly Fisherman, Big Sky Journal, and Salt Water Sportsman. He's also written or co-authored numerous books. Just a few include The Little Black Book of Fly Fishing, 201 Tips to Make You a Better Angler, The Little Red Book of Fly Fishing, Tideline, Captain's Fly Fishing in the American Coast, and several others. I've included an Amazon link in the show notes if you want to check them out. Kirk is a skilled writer and storyteller and a very experienced trout angler. Basically, I've been joined by an outdoor journalism and fishing legend. Thanks so much for joining me, Kirk.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for the kind words.
Well, there's a million things we could talk about, and I certainly hope that you'll join me for future episodes. We're going to talk a little bit about the state of Coldwater Fisheries. The foremost mission of Trout Unlimited, as I understand it at least, is conservation work to preserve these coldwater fisheries. First of all, is this a good characterization of the thrust of Trout Unlimited's work?
We're all vested in this. It's coldwater fisheries, when we're really talking about lakes and rivers and source waters. You know, in the Midwest, they come from the springs. In the East, they come from the springs and the mountains. Out here where I live in Colorado, it's the high country and the snow melt and so forth. And when you take care of the water at its source, its effects are felt well downstream. You know, some of the more famous trout fishing rivers in the country, like the Delaware River in upper, New York, Pennsylvania area, that's the source of drinking water for New York City too. So we take care of water in general, and sure, some of that's for fun and fishing, but a lot of that's just for the environment and taking care of what everyone needs, and that's clean, cold water.
Yeah, I mean, in Trout Unlimited, really, I mean, your work is to raise awareness of the risk to some of these waterways and helping to conserve them, correct?
That's right. We raise awareness. We're a neat organization. I joined I joined as a member many, many years ago, and proud to do that. My dad was a member. My in-laws are members and grandparents. You know, it's part of the family. We have a fishing tradition. We love to fish, and part of that was taking care of the resources as you go. So I was a member for a long time, and then I covered Trout Unlimited and their work. I did stories on Alaska and other parts of the country, the Southwest, and for Field and Stream magazine. And then they had me join on the crew here full time, and it's been an honor because it's kind of a homecoming for me. I'm back to something that I wake up every morning and I really believe in what I'm doing, and I believe in the work that we do as an organization. And I'm proud of the organization because we not only advocate, we raise awareness. Absolutely, that's an important part of the work that we do. But we also fix rivers. We get in there and we turn the rocks over and we plant the trees on the side and we make shade and we make structure and we help clean things up when there's a problem, and we protect them so that the problems don't pop up in the future. So it's really a complete spectrum of taking care of cold water that Trout Unlimited is engaged with right now.
I mean, some of the reasons are obvious, I think, but, why are coldwater fisheries so challenged?
Well, we do have that issue of climate change, and that's something that...
a little pesky issue.
A little pesky issue. We need to talk about that. But, we see warming temperatures, and that's not good for fish sometimes. Trout like the water to be less than 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And we've seen in the West, for example, last summer, a number of rivers were closed or restricted the hours so that you could only fish in the evening when it was cool or early mornings, because those daytime temperatures popped up there into the 70s. And so we have to watch that. We have to watch runoff. We have to watch the events that are triggered by climate change, like floods and fires. In where I live in Colorado, we've had massive wildfires, and that the effects of those are felt for many, many years after, as the ash washes into the river, covers the river bottom. The insects are then suffocated, and then the insects are what the fish eat. So it's a chain reaction. All those things we have to tune into. Floods are an issue, but there are things. The good news is that they're by and large fixable, and even on the climate change scale, we can do things that mitigate the effects of climate change. And so we're making differences that are seen. And we've seen a lot of rivers in this country that are better now than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I have great optimism that if we talk 20, 30, 40 years into the future, we're going to have healthy rivers still, if we are diligent and do our best.
That's great, because much of the news you hear isn't so optimistic. So it's always
That's true.
good
That's
to hear
right.
a little bit of. I mean, I think that people often don't think about just things like ash in the river from wildfires changes the acidity of the water and things of that nature. I mean, I think a lot of people don't really. We kind of live in a society that doesn't really understand anymore that everything is interconnected.
And you hit the magic word there too. Connectivity is another thing that we really focus on. A lot of fish, like salmon, for example, go to the ocean and then they move back up the rivers to spawn and create new generations of salmon and so forth. And that's the same in the Great Lakes, where they've introduced salmon and so forth. But if those fish can't get up and over past dams, for example, we break that chain, we break that cycle. And that's another thing that we have to be focused on. If we can connect things, even simple things like fixing culverts in where they get smashed or they've gotten filled in with rock and sediment and so forth, and the fish can't get through. Well, that's how little fish get made. So we want to make sure we make as many little fish as we can, and by creating the habitat that allows the little fish to happen, we also improve the overall health of the river. And that's a benefit for everybody, whether they fish or not.
I live in Chicago, actually, and spend a decent amount of time in the north suburbs of Chicago, and they are constantly developing new retail development. Sometimes housing too, but a lot of new retail development, and just will bulldoze forest without really thinking too much about it. And then everybody is really shocked when they have foxes, coyotes, and so forth in their front yards. And, I don't understand. It's just amazing. I think that people literally don't understand, whether it's waterways or land, that things are interconnected, and you disrupt things, there's going to be consequences.
That's right. And sometimes it's hard to put all the pickup sticks back together once they're scattered all over the place, right? So sometimes
right.
being diligent
Right.
and preventing that stuff from happening is the best play. And glad to hear if you're from Chicago. I'm from Milwaukee originally, so right up the way on the lake. And I hold those places, like I was saying to my friends the other day, you could blindfold me, take me up into space and beam me down and the shore of Lake Michigan, and I'd know exactly where I was, because I can feel it, and I can smell it and all that stuff. So it makes it. And so waters are sacred. Waters are important. And I think a lot of people feel that way, especially those of us who have been lucky enough to grow up on or around some of our notable waterways.
I definitely do. I'm a Lake Michigan, Great Lakes girl, and value them highly. So, yeah. So, how does Trout Unlimited go about? I know you do a lot of advocacy work and this kind of thing. Like, how do you go about managing some of the conflicting interests of landowners, government agencies, nonprofits, all municipalities, all these stakeholders? I mean, how do you kind of handle some of that?
Well, you raise a good point. It's a balancing act, right? You have to look for win-wins. The good news is that fishing, if that's where it starts, if that's where the conversation starts, fishing isn't a political issue. Fishing is a cultural issue. People from all sides of the spectrum love fishing, and their families are part of the fishing community. It's a community. So it's easy to find common ground, and it's easy to say, well, it's not always easy. I may be overstating things a little bit, but there's an opportunity to find common ground, and it exists. So no matter where someone's coming from, if a private landowner, well, maybe I can't go on their private land and they don't want me there. But what happens on their private land, if that river flows through it and goes down, and we're talking about the health of the waterway and the fish and so forth, I do have a vested interest in how that person manages their property and how that water is affected and so forth. So, and vice versa. We as a country have more public lands and public waters than anywhere. I'm lucky because I got to travel all over the world and write about fishing. It's a tough job. Somebody had to do it, right? So, but no matter where I've gone, it's unanimous. The United States is the envy of the world for our public resources that we share. And those are things that we all have a vested interest in protecting one way or the other. And because it is a public interest, again, to your point, we're able to find common ground and we're able to work in a nonpartisan way, not just bipartisan, nonpartisan way to find some solutions and get things done.
No, these things, you're absolutely right. Sometimes there's certainly valid debates amongst well-intended people on the best ways to handle these things. There's not always a clear right answer, and sometimes there's multiple right answers or good answers.
Right.
But you're right. It's not a partisan issue. It's just it's a discussion amongst well-intended people, I believe. We talked a little bit about global warming just a couple minutes ago. Global warming is, a lot's being done to reverse, the damage, mitigate the risks of it, but it's going to continue, odds are. What challenges, lie ahead for the coldwater fisheries?
The coldwater fisheries are really kind of the canaries in the coal mine, and that we see the effects of climate change. As an angler who's been fishing my whole life, I've seen rivers change. I've seen changes in the animals that are around the river, the bugs that hatch in the rivers come at different times of the year now. The levels of the rivers are different sometimes. We've seen, the ash from fires and the effects of floods and the logs moved around and all that. So it's right there in front of you. When you're in waders and you're out there fishing, you look around and you can see this, right? So it's actually, again, you can probably tell I'm an optimist by nature, but what it does is it tells people, okay, here it is. Like, let's not argue about this anymore. Let's get about the business of fixing it, and let's get about doing what we can. And there's some changes that people are able to make in their lives and some that they're not, and that's fine. But there are some things we can do to mitigate the effects. And planting trees, I can't count how many trees TU and our partners have planted over the years, but just planting the trees makes a huge difference, not only in terms of the air, but also the shade, and shade creates coolness and so forth. So there are things that can be done. And then, managing how we approach certain things and working to cooperate with each other. I think there is a blueprint for success if we're diligent about these things.
The thing that I love is I think that fishing PartsVu has been pretty active in coastal marine conservation efforts, supporting some of those efforts. And the thing that's exciting to me is I think fishing is a great equalizer. You have a discussion about global warming outside of the context of fishing or outdoor sports that people like. The discussion tends to kind of go off the rails a bit, but every angler, you have the discussion in the context of fishing or sport or whatever. Every angler that's experienced and has been out there can see what's happening. May not see the micro view or understand detailed science, but it's real, right? They can see it. So fishing is sort of like it's an ambassador, really, of goodwill and positive change.
I love that. And I love what you said, equalizer. One of the things I've always said, I used to be a guide and would take people, and I still take people fishing for fun now, but you could have the most high-powered CEO, brilliant doctor type or whatever, and they get in a boat with you and they realize, they're used to being the smartest person in the room, and they might not be the smartest person in the boat. They might be they used to, and they might be the second or third smartest person in the boat when it comes to the fishing. And they love that. There's always something to learn from nature, from other people that you're with, and so on and so forth. So it's a community, and it's refreshing for a lot of people to be able to start the learning process and build along as they go. And it makes people feel young again. And that's one of the beauties of fishing too. And that's why, to put a bow on some of this, that's why those things, fishing is a lot more than pulling on fish. Fishing is community, it's family, it's fun, it makes people young, helps people's mental health, it helps people's physical health to be outside. That's such a wonderful thing that we have to be diligent and protect the resources that make it possible in the first place, right? And if we don't do that, then we're just shooting ourselves in our feet. So, and that's my 2 cents, and that's what I was trying to get at earlier, where that's why coming to Trout Unlimited has been a homecoming, and waking up and feeling purpose every day is an important part of what we do, and that's a good thing. And by the way, thank you also in PartsVu for all the support that you've done. And coastal stuff, it's all connected. It starts in the mountains, and the rivers flow to the coasts, and we're all connected. And I love saltwater fishing too. I'm rambling, but I love saltwater fishing, so I just had to say that.
No, absolutely. I love it too. I don't have as much experience saltwater fishing as I do freshwater, but it's super. It's really fun as well. We actually we have a relationship with a bass angler, professional bass angler, a guy named Garrett Paquette, and he's down in Florida in a couple weeks for a tournament, and his experience is virtually all freshwater, bass fishing, and we're actually going to do like a battle of the angler kind of thing, like have him fish with a very experienced saltwater angler, and then we're hoping to ship the saltwater angler up to Michigan and have them, have him kind of out of his context. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I wish, that would be interesting. Keep me posted on how that goes. I want to see what happens. It'd be, but you learn something every time you go. And again, it's all connected, but that's why I like saltwater fishing, because of what I was saying earlier. It puts me on a peg where I've got to start learning and figuring things out. It's a brave new world for me. Bass fishing too. Love that. I love all sorts of fishing. So, that's the neat thing.
So, for anglers passionate about preserving our fisheries, first of all, they should be joining Trout Unlimited for sure. And so, and supporting your efforts are really important. Everything Trout Unlimited is doing. What else can people do?
Well, I appreciate that for saying that. Thank you. But they can volunteer. You don't have to necessarily join even. You can show up at a river cleanup and help out. The beauty of Trout Unlimited also is that we have so many volunteers, over 300,000 members and supporters throughout the country. And collectively, they put in almost 800,000 volunteer hours every year, cleaning rivers, turning rocks, that kind of stuff. The labor value of 800,000 hours of work is immense. It's millions and millions of dollars in value. And so the more people can engage or, read our stories, come online and read what we have to say on tu.org, that's contributing. It's helping the community. Go to help with a river cleanup, or tune in or whatever. Those types of things, people can, many hands make light work, right? That's the old saying. And the more hands, the better off and more effective we are as an organization, and more effective we are as a fishing community, whether you're a member of TU or not.
That's great. That's some really great advice, and certainly helping with those river cleanups is something everyone can do.
Yeah, and you know what? You feel really good when you're done with those. I've had more fun on days where what I was catching was trash bags full of stuff, plastic. But the conversation, the conversations and the impact. You go home at the end of the day and you say, "Well, I made a difference today," and that's a neat thing that everyone is invited to take part in.
That's great. That is great. I'll put my name in the hat for that.
Oh, good.
A time where I can join you guys.
Good.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being here today, Kurt. I encourage all of our listeners to follow Kurt and Trout Unlimited on their social channels, and I've included those links in the show notes. I also encourage our listeners to visit Trout Unlimited at tu.org, as Kurt said, and check out their work and consider becoming a member. Finally, I've included an Amazon link that will allow you to easily find out Kurt's books. So they look very interesting. So thanks again for being here, Kurt. And it was really great talking with you.
Well, thanks again for having me and for all of the work that you're doing. And I look forward to coming back sometime if you'll have me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating podcast. Is it almost time for routine maintenance on your outboard or Mercruiser marine engine? Check out our easy-to-use maintenance kits at PartsVu.com. And for free shipping, use the coupon code PVTalksBoating, a special perk for our podcast listeners. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for boating knowledge, to keep in touch with the PartsVu community, and for special sales and promotions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and check out the show notes for the coupon code just mentioned, more information about PartsVu and the products we offer, as well as our boating blog, the PartsVu Xchange. And a big thanks to Min for performing the original music featured within this podcast.